How's it going? My name is King Jobs or Jobs, and today we're going over the best multiplayer and Warzone builds for the new Season 2 guns, the BP50 Assault Rifle and the RAM-9 SMG. Before we get into the builds, there are some of you out there that might just be starting to play the new season here this weekend and are wondering which one you should unlock first. Well, after having played about 20 multiplayer games and 10 Warzone games with both guns, I think that the RAM-9 is definitely the one that you should unlock first, especially if you play Warzone. The RAM-9 in particular is going to be the sub that I use until the next set of patches come out, unless I get bored. However, that doesn't mean that the BP50 is bad. It's just not quite as good as the RAM-9 is. All right, with that out of the way, let's quickly go over the recoil patterns of each gun to give you guys some background on why I built these guns the way that I did. As you can see for the BP50, it's got a very vertical recoil pattern with a slight tilt to the right. However, overall, the recoil on this gun is very easy to control. But the more important thing to notice is that there isn't a lot of side-to-side recoil, so keep that in mind for later. As for the RAM-9, the recoil pattern, it's kind of all over the place. It goes to the left and then to the right and then hard to the left again. So for this gun, you should be focusing a bit more on building to control that horizontal recoil. All right, with the recoil patterns done, let's get straight into the multiplayer and Warzone builds for the BP50 Assault Rifle. Starting up with the multiplayer build for the BP50, we have this. And as some of you may know, I myself love rocking suppressors and stealthier builds in multiplayer, as I think that helps make those high kill streaks such as the Swarm or Juggernaut much more attainable. So due to this, we have the Shadow Strike suppressor as our muzzle. All it does is just keeps you off the minimap. Next up for the barrel, we're using the Lore 9 heavy barrel for the buffs to the damage range and bullet velocity. For the underbarrel, I've opted to use the X10 Phantom hand stop for that big boost to your ADS, sprint to fire time, as well as a little bit of gun kick and vertical recoil control. Now, once you guys start using the BP50, you'll notice that sometimes it'll feel just a bit weak. And that's exactly why I'm running the high velocity rounds for the additional damage range and bullet velocity. The only downside to using high velocity rounds is that it does decently increase your recoil. However, like I said earlier, the recoil on the BP50 is very easy to control and you guys don't need to worry about having high velocity rounds on this weapon. Last but not least, we have the 4-bearer heavy stock. And the reason why is that I didn't want to hurt the sprint to fire time in multiplayer with the Moat 40 stock. I think that sprint to fire speed in multiplayer is super important and it's something you should absolutely prioritize for your primary weapon. Now for the BP50 Warzone build. For the muzzle, we have the sonic suppressor. And I've seen a lot of people recommending the VT7 Spitfire suppressor, but I've got to be honest, I don't get why people are using that. Yes, there's a bit of recoil control, but you lose out on a ton of ADS speed as well as damage range and bullet velocity in comparison to the sonic suppressor. And trust me, you guys don't need the recoil control from the muzzle with this gun. We've got that more than covered with the other attachments. Once again, just like multiplayer, we have the Lore 9 heavy barrel for the damage range and bullet velocity. And for the exact same reason as multiplayer, I've got the high grain rounds on again. Now, this is where things get a little bit different, and I'm using the Moat 40 stock in Warzone. Because in Warzone, you don't really have to worry about that sprint to fire speed as much in my opinion. I'd much rather have the additional recoil control and general movement speed buffs. And hopefully you guys can tell from the clips going on in the background that both of these builds are definitely the move for each mode. Also, one thing I'd like to note on the BP50 Warzone build, I'm not using an optic on this because I think that for most players and most maps in Warzone, these iron sights are going to be more than sufficient. The only time I would maybe consider swapping these out is on Urzikstan. However, other than that, if you're mainly a Resurgence player, I definitely recommend you don't use an optic. Now let's move on to what I believe is the #1 submachine gun in terms of both multiplayer and Warzone, which is the RAM-9. So thinking back to the beginning of the video and that side-to-side recoil pattern and building with horizontal recoil control in mind, here's what I've been rocking in multiplayer. Now in multiplayer, I opted for the L4R flash hider as it offers a good amount of both horizontal and recoil control with just a medium penalty to ADS speeds. And the reason why I opted for a muzzle that offers a lot of recoil control is because in multiplayer, you never really know what map you're going to be on, whether it's kind of like a longer range map or a very close range map. So opting to go for somewhere in the middle is what I think works best. That way you're not tinkering with attachments in between games all the time. You can just use this and know that it's always going to perform well. Next up, we have the Armistice light barrel for the increased ADS speed, sprint to fire speed, and general movement buffs. Now, in general, I would say that this is the only barrel that I recommend using on this gun. I've tried all the other ones out and I really did not like any of them. This is the only one that I found a lot of success with, and if you'd rather use a different attachment other than the barrel, I think that's totally an acceptable thing to do. which you'll see me doing in the Warzone build. For the underbarrel, we have the X10 Phantom 5 hand stop, as well as the 40 round mag. And finally, we opted to go with the Hunker 5 stock pad for the buffs to recoil control without any major penalties to ADS and sprint to fire speeds. And like I mentioned earlier, this build is going to offer you great recoil control and allow you to win those medium range gunfights with ease. Now, some people might say you don't need this much recoil control, and if you agree with them, in that case, I'd recommend that you opt to go for my Warzone build instead for multiplayer. And on the topic of my Warzone build, here's what I'm using, and trust me, this thing goes crazy. In 10 Resurgence games last night, I never lost a sub battle with this gun one time. I never got gunned, I never got put down. This thing is insane. First up is the muzzle, and we have the Zeman 35 compensator, which mainly focuses on vertical recoil control with only minor penalties to ADS speed. And that's why I think that this is a great muzzle to use for Warzone. Next up, I have the DR6 handstop to really juice up that ADS, sprint to fire times, and movement speed. And now since we're in Warzone, you gotta rock that 50 round mag, especially if you play quads or trios. However, if you mainly play duos or solos, you'd definitely be fine with the 40 round mag, which would help out your ADS and sprint to fire times. For the fourth attachment, we have the Hunker 5 stock pad, which provides more recoil control than the HVS 3.4 pad. It also doesn't hurt your movement speed like the HVS does. And finally, yes, you're seeing this right, we've got a comb equipped, which I would say is unusual for all other Modern Warfare 3 weapon builds. However, this comb, the Recon comb, is crazy as it offers a 15% buff to your sprint to fire times, as well as a 3% buff to your ADS speed. So you're gonna be able to get your weapon up quick and put people down even quicker. Now, as you're leveling things up, I recommend for the BP50 just focusing on limiting that vertical recoil control just a little bit. However, like I said, the recoil on this gun is super easy to control. You really don't have to worry about any of the recoiled attachments all that much. As for the RAM-9, it's definitely got some more recoil, so focus on minimizing the horizontal and vertical recoil while keeping that sprint to fire time up as much as you can. Now, my overall thoughts on these are that they each have their place in the meta. However, unlike the BP50, the RAM-9 is going to be the sub that I rock in every Warzone game until the next patch. But in terms of primaries, I'm probably going to be bouncing around a little bit. Don't get me wrong, the BP50 is very good and it's very easy to use. It just doesn't have a big enough mag to be the meta gun for Warzone. So due to this, I'm probably going to be mixing in the MTZ-762, the TAC Evolve Veer, maybe some other ones as well. And if you don't have those guns leveled, I recommend that you do that. Also, let me know down in the comments if you'd like to see me make another video on my favorite or best weapon builds for a particular gun or game mode. But with that, thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you all in the next one.